Okay. All right. So to kick things off, Chris, can you cue up that John Kerry clip? I just want to get in the right mindset. I need to see this again.
I'm John Kerry, and I'm reporting for duty.
Yeah,
all right,
boy, he's back. He's back. He's back.
Chris, you should edit this in, just as a warning. Like, if you're a woman, fair warning, at the beginning of the show, we played some audio that will cause your ovaries to explode.
He is a 5-star pimp, is all there is to it.
Yeah, John Kerry
he's
rocks.
Dripping. He's dripping.
So
He is.
cool.
Welcome to our new climate czar, John Kerry, and welcome to our guest for this week, Osita Nwanevu of the New Republic. Osita, what's going on?
Not much. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we figured you just had a piece coming out now in the New Republic about just the looking back on the Obama years, and now that we're in the era of Obama restoration, and Joe Biden is doing the Obama administration speed run. Hopefully, he can get through all 8 years and everyone who served in that government in the next 4. So
that we can get President My Pillow guy.
I want to talk to you about some of this stuff in Obama's memoir, some of the stuff about, just sort of how I don't know. I'd be interested to hear how much you think it's still Obama's party, or about what we could expect for the next 4 years. But before we get there, I just do want to check in on the status of Team Trump and the legal action to stop the steal going on. I don't know if you've been following this. Sidney Powell, no longer part of Team Trump. She is no longer representing the Trump campaign. I believe she's representing various private lawsuits, which are amassing a huge trove of information about the stolen election. And she's not telling the information to judges because, like every lawyer knows, you don't present evidence to a judge.
No, obviously.
No.
Dumbass.
You don't.
Judges, no.
You present. You tell the judge what you're going to do, so that they can either reject your case or hear it out. But the idea is to just buy enough time to get all the documents so that the Supreme Court hears you. That's when you unlock the fucking document case.
When you go in front of a judge, anyone other than the Supreme Court, in any case, all you're really doing is going, "Don't believe me, just watch."
Yeah. If you show evidence to a judge, they put it under their robe and no one gets to see it again. So you better be sure.
You can't give it to them. They'll just hold on to it.
Yeah, you better be sure you'll win.
That's
what's going on here.
It should be noted that basically 3 days ago, the GOP's official Twitter account was like, "Meet Sidney Powell. She's on our team. She's got the goods. She's going to release the Kraken." And then 3 days later, they're like, "Sidney Powell is no longer affiliated with the Trump legal team."
The Kraken died.
Yeah, the Kraken died. And I think it probably has something to do with her argument in court that the Republican governor and Secretary of State of Georgia literally colluded with Hugo Chavez to steal the election for money. So I think that might be why they're ditching her, but I don't know. Osita, have you been following the Trump legal, the Trump campaign 2.0, the legal campaign?
I've been trying to, man, and it's been hard. We're in a place now where the argument on the right now is that Brian Kemp is too into democracy. Like, that's where things have gone in the last 2 years. I watched a little bit of that press conference from a couple of days ago where there was some oil or liquid exuding from Rudy Giuliani's skull or something.
It was like the X-Files. It was the black oil from that, the alien host. It was leaving him. It was leaving his body.
That was excess testosterone.
Of course. But I think at that conference they were trying to invoke Hugo Chavez and suggesting that there was a huge plot connected with Venezuela in some way to steal the votes. And in that kind of environment, I don't know how you fire somebody for being too unserious. I don't know what the actual grounds.
We know for a fact that Trump gets very mad at his underlings when he sees them on TV and he doesn't think that they looked good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I watched the Rudy Giuliani press conference, the second half of it anyway. And by the way, I started watching it after I saw the memes about his face dripping, his face coming off of him, and I just thought, oh shit. I turned it on and he wasn't talking anymore, and I just assumed, well, he'll have dobbed them off by now. He's not talking anymore. Oh no, they kept going. He didn't notice it until right at the end, And I saw her talk, and she sounded like a crazy person.
Yeah, no, it's not just that the content of what she said was crazy.
Exactly. I'm not talking about her saying, like, they went to Venezuela and got Hugo Chavez, like, whatever. The words don't. We're not talking about words. Like, people watch this like dogs do. It's about tone.
Yeah.
She sounded like a crazy person. She sounded like somebody in front of a bus station with newspapers in her boots.
Yeah.
Had the votes for President Trump not been so overwhelming in so many of these states that it broke the algorithm that had been plugged into the system, that's when they came in the back door with all the mail-in ballots, many of which they had actually fabricated with identically matching perfect circle dots for Mr. Biden.
It was also like the aesthetic choices of the press conferences were interesting. Like, obviously, there's Rudy and his like the soy sauce he put in his hair falling down his face. But like Sidney Pollock's like
Sidney Pollock. Sidney Pollock.
Yeah. The deceased director.
She was like Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp fucked his brains out. You know, it's life. Life goes on, and then it doesn't, right?
Yeah. Her outfit was like a leopard print cardigan.
Yeah,
that was her fancy lawyer outfit. Like, it was a bad look. And I think Trump's going to keep Giuliani around forever because it's like, you know, we talked about how Giuliani is the court jester for America now. And I think Trump likes having like a slapstick guy like that around. But Sidney Powell she's not going to get anything done.
Oh, God, no.
No, yeah. She's actually very ill.
I mean, so Sidney Powell, I mean, did you guys see the thing where Tucker Carlson is now being accused of being a member of the Pizzagate child pedophilia conspiracy because he had Sidney Powell on his show and just simply asked her, what is the evidence for this massive election fraud? And she was just like Matt said, don't believe me, just watch. And just for asking that question, Tucker Carlson is now on the enemies list. And I guess like
it's so perfect how that works too, because the QAnon like excommunication process with any celebrity or politician works the same, because if you turn your baleful Q eye onto someone and look at them through the Q lens, and they're rich and a connected person in this country, you will find the same connections to pedophile sickos that every other fucking rich person that you think is a pedophile has. And so you'll be like, aha, because it was always there. You just weren't looking because you thought he was on your side.
Well, I mean, I think that Carlson has been trying to walk this very delicate line from the beginning of this thing. My take on this whole charade for really months has been that if Trump actually lost, we were definitely going to see all that we're seeing from him directly, this idea that the election's being stolen, there's a lot of fraud. But my take has been that the Republican Party is not invested enough in Trump being president again to materially help him in any kind of way. Conservative media infrastructure as well. So they'll definitely, say, oh, we should, take these legal cases seriously, and their shenanigans are afoot and whatever. But they were never going to actually, at least a critical mass of them, and the most important people were never going to actually do what would have taken to let Trump prevail here. So Carlson has been one of the people who's been put out in front with the task of talking people down. Right. Yes, we know that you're mad. We got to look into this, but maybe he actually lost, right?
And he's essentially trying to soothe the temper tantrum.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's been an interesting, I guess everyone speaks the same language now of trauma and giving people time to heal. And Tucker Carlson is like, he's sort of the tough love therapist for the MAGA people, where it's like, I know, it was very unfair. Take your time to heal. But QAnon, first of all, I think QAnon is an actual deep state project. Like, if you were going to invent a conspiracy theory that was meant to discredit other more credible conspiracy theories, I think it would look a lot like QAnon and Pizzagate. But it's also, it takes two to tango. And the reason people are into QAnon is because it's sort of like the last spasm of everyone knows this is ending. Whatever this is, we know it's ending. And one response is that you drown yourself in gifts and, like the president hanging out with Jonathan Van Ness or fucking whatever, and you don't have anything to back it up, but a new day is coming. It's morning in America. Or you believe in this sort of fortress America coming back, and a sort of merger of Bircherism and Reagan will rule forever. And QAnon is just, it's like in that type of brain that wants that, it's the DMT vision before you die.
Yeah.
And it's not like there's nothing you can really do to get anyone out of it. You can't fact check your way out of it.
It's the world where JFK didn't die.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do to fact check out of it or like deplatform out of it. It's just like that's what happens when this comes to an end. That like 30% of the country just believes in magic now.
Yeah,
that's what happens. Sorry, you can't do anything about it. That's one of the reasons why it's bad to have an empire.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And on the other side, you have a Democratic base that is to almost completely, in some degree of delusional denial about their relationship to the Democratic Party, that is as psychically twisted as any kind of Q cosmology.
Yeah.
Like the way that the average Democrat views the party that they vote for is as delusional in its relationship to reality as a fantasy about underground pizza, child eating dungeon.
Matt, you're saying you're not experiencing democracy foreplay right now? Is that what you're trying
I
to...
am not. I'm not edging towards democracy. Although I give that lady credit. The lady who said that she's can't wait to have the democracy orgasm on Inauguration Day. At least she's imagining that this like libidinal dance that she's doing with politics as a spectacle and part of her life is going to actually end in an orgasm. What the hell are the rest of us getting out of it?
A back rub for Tony Blinken.
Well, I want to talk about let's go back in time now, because I mean I know you guys have been seeing this. Part 1 of Obama's memoir is out, and I know you guys have been looking at a lot of the same excerpts that I've been looking at, and I think this would be like a good time to like discuss like just based on the excerpts I've seen in this book, and then Osita's piece about Obama and his years, like how Obama sees himself and like how the party sees itself as being a sort of like who's leading who here. And the first excerpt I want to talk about is this pretty incredible excerpt where he talks about the Iran-Iraq war in the 80s. And I'm just quoting here. He says, Iraq's attempted 1980 invasion of Iran and the bloody 8-year war that followed, a war in which the Gulf states provided Saddam Hussein with financing while the Soviets supplied Khomeini's military with arms, including chemical weapons, accelerated Iran's sponsorship of terrorism as a way to offset its enemy's military advantages. Okay, the Soviet Union not only did not supply Khomeini with chemical weapons, it actually provided weapons to Iraq during the Iran-Iraq war. And it was America who supplied Iraq with the chemical weapons that were used on Iran. Osita, do you think Obama just isn't aware of this, or like you think this is just an error in his knowledge, or is this like a conscious like lie on his part, or is it impossible to say?
I think it's difficult to say. I mean, I think one thing that we are being reminded of, not just with Obama, but with Biden, in the last few weeks, is that these are people who just get most of their worldview from people like Tom Friedman, New York Times op-ed page, Fareed Zakaria, that entire nexus of commentators who are shaping the way elites think about American foreign policy. I think that Obama and Biden are people who genuinely trust those voices and have genuinely sort of derived a worldview from the things they hear from that cohort. I mean, people have said
there's something called a national interest, and it's served by these people.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. So, I don't know whether... I don't know whether it's an actual lie or something else, but I do think that there is a level of uncritical acceptance of particular narratives about American foreign policy on Obama's part and Biden's part as well. I think that they genuinely trust the stories that they've been told. And
one of those stories would be that the Iran-Iraq war was bad because both sides were selling arms to every side, and that America's role in that and who we were selling arms to is just sort of elided. And there's a line you have in your piece in the New Republic about Obama that I thought was really, really interesting and on point. Where you talked about how Obama, he has this genius way of talking about politics where he presents himself as sort of demystifying the processes and nature of our political system, but is actually doing the complete opposite. He mystifies through this pretend demystification. And I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so I wrote that in reference to a speech that Biden made last week where he talked about deciding to cooperate, that our problems in Washington are a consequence of Democrats and Republicans simply not making the right choice, and the right choice being we're going to set aside our differences and come together and whatever. and this was sort of him being or trying to be the adult in the room and suggesting that there's a level of personal, like our problems in politics are a matter of personal temperament, right? And not making the choice to collaborate with people on the other side. That to me reminded me a lot of the speech that put Obama on the national stage in 2004, his Democratic National Convention speech, where he talks about, well, we're not actually the blue states, the red states, we're the United States. And it's framed as like, oh, this is like the answer. Like we've been fed this lie that there are actual real divisions in American life. But really, if you get past all that, the hard truth that you will come to understand if you're a smart person is that we should all hold hands and make things work for the country or something. Like it's this weird way of presenting a message as a kind of, I don't know, a secret key to unlock everything, right? And the thing that is clarifying that actually just ends up puzzling people or sort of stupefying people even more, because it's an even more radically unreal version of what is happening than the thing that you're trying to dismystify in the first place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, and another thing you point out is that in his own writing, Obama makes it clear that he's not unaware of like the critiques from his left or whatever being essentially, if all things are being equal, correct, at least vis-a-vis like, you know, healthcare reform or things like that. And there's another example where he's quoted talking of Biden's recent comments that like, you know, I know how to deal with Mitch McConnell because we've been friends for years. And Obama was like, well, yeah, Joe knows Mitch McConnell. They've known each other for a long time, but they're not friends. So he's like, I mean, you think he like, is he trying to give Biden some fucking advice before he takes office?
I don't think so. So I read that in other portions of the excerpts where he's being candid about certain realities. I honestly read that as him trying to save face for posterity. Like I think he cares a lot about his own legacy, and he's aware enough of where things are going, just sort of as a historical trend line, to know that 20, 30, 40 years from now, people are going to look back at his presidency and his way of thinking about politics, and they'll understand that it was nonsense, that it was bullshit. And so he has to signal now that he is aware of that, so that history's judgment on him isn't as harsh as it would otherwise be. So he has to include things in his memoirs and in his writings and in his speeches where he acknowledges reality now. I don't think it's him signaling to Biden as much as it is him sort of trying to give himself like an insurance policy for his own public reception down the line.
Yeah. And
yeah,
I mean,
the key to understanding Obama, I feel like, has always been he cares about his legacy and how it will appear in you know, retrospectives and movies and everything like that in the cultural memory years from now. He doesn't, people, whenever people talked about Obama fretting about his legacy after Trump, people on the left would go, oh, that's bullshit, he doesn't care about anything. And it's like, no, he does care about his legacy, but in a way that's only focused on media consumption.
Yeah.
That is
his entire
main
existence is to
animating
be
thing.
talked about in the media, the same way it is with Trump, only he wants it to be approvingly.
Yeah.
He wants to, and he has the same detachment, as we said, from like actually governing that Trump does. Like Obama just glided through the presidency because he always just assumed he wasn't actually in charge of anything. But he was learning something. He was having the promised land delivered to him, and it was going to be then reflected in an audience like affirming that. And so as soon as he gets out of office, all he cares about is his legacy and becoming a goddamn fucking Netflix producer and content guru, because that's literally the end goal of like everybody in the educated classes in America now. It is to mythologize yourself for others, even though you never fucking did anything.
Yeah, Obama, I mean, the way he looked at the presidency itself, actually very similar to being a reality TV star.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things you point out in the piece, Osita, is that like Obama said, like in an interview with Jeffrey Goldberg, he was like, you know, who's your ideal reader for this book? And Obama said it was like a 25-year-old who was like interested in politics and like wanted to do good in the world or contribute in some way. And I think you pointed out, like, for anyone who's 25 now and interested in politics, like Obama's presidency was the example that like turned them into like psychopaths or listeners to podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know where he's finding this. I mean, I'm sure that there are people who are still, who are going to go into the Biden administration really excited to have a Democratic revival, who are really young and hoping that they're going to get some position somewhere on a campaign that means something. And like, I think that cadre of people still exists. It's just much smaller now. And so the 25-year-olds who Obama is mostly contending with are people who've been radicalized by the failures of the last 10 years. And again, I think he knows that. So like his appeal to that portion of the public and his appeal to posterity is creating this space in the memoir where he actually says, well, yeah, it was kind of true that like the pharmaceutical industry like owned the Democratic Party. And yeah, that was why we didn't do a public option, right? Like it's him acknowledging, again, reality, because he knows that the narrative is kind of collapsed, and he has to create a space for himself where he's still going to find respect in the future. And that means acknowledging certain things, not because he hopes that Biden actually learns from any of it, but as a sort of self-preservation of his own legacy.
I mean, as long as you're talking about preserving his legacy, but I mean, cutting against that, at least that 25-year-old, in terms of things that absolutely nobody wants to hear. There was another excerpt about it where he talked about his inauguration and the protests that greeted George W. Bush as he left office. And he writes here, quote, "I felt quietly angry on his behalf. To protest a man in the final hour of his presidency seemed graceless and unnecessary. More generally, I was troubled by what these last-minute protests said about the divisions that were churning across the country and the weakening of whatever boundaries of decorum had once regulated politics." I mean, he's talking about a guy that killed 1 million people in Iraq, and he's just like, it was graceless of people to fucking boo him on the way out the door. I mean, who is this for? Because that's not for the 25-year-old young Democratic progressive activist or whatever. I mean, this is
to be all people. He has to be a man for all people, right? Like that's again, he in a way that like. We were just talking about Tucker Carlson being sort of the guy who has to manage Republicans as like a constituency now. I think that everybody who's a major public figure, really always, but especially today, has to sort of ride these like intrinsic divisions within their respective constituencies. So Obama wants to be liked by the 25-year-old. He wants to be liked by the Washington establishment. He wants to be liked by sort of generic Democrat suburban voters. And the memoir is supposed to appeal to as many of those people as possible, even if there are sort of contradictory messages and contradictory ideas within them. The hope is that all of that will be sort of brushed aside, subsumed by Obama as like an icon and somebody who like is this transcendent figure at the end of the day, no matter what you think about him. But yeah, like the Bush thing, if you read it on its own, is not going to appeal to, I don't know, like I think that even generic Democrats at this point, I mean, I guess there's been this revival of Bush's legacy, and there are people who enter into that, but you know, the idea that protesting a public figure is somehow indecorous now, I think is kind of an idea that's gone by the wayside. I don't know that anybody really thinks that way about politics anymore, really. Even people who are disapproving of like yelling at Trump officials who are eating in restaurants like they were in 2018, like even that's kind of half-hearted and isn't really as full of an ethos as civility was in the Obama era.
Yeah, like the idea that it's indecorous or something, or for like average citizens to voice their anger publicly at a president. It's like, you know, hey, I punch up, not down.
Yeah.
Speaking
Don't
of
boo, vote. That's what he said. He said that. Don't boo, vote.
Here's another excerpt. This one actually struck me as like the most jaw dropping and telling in the book, and it's where he's talking about his old friend Reverend Wright. And I gotta say, during the 2008 campaign, like that was the starting gun that should have let everyone know that this guy was full of shit, is like how easily he fucking threw Reverend Wright, his own fucking minister, under the bus for like, you know, he just says here, there were times when I found Reverend Wright's sermons a little over the top. In the middle of a scholarly explication of the book of Matthew or Luke, he might insert a scathing critique of America's drug war, America's militarism, capitalist greed, or the intractability of American racism. Rants that were usually grounded in fact, but bereft of context. Often they sounded dated, as if you were channeling a college teach-in from 1968, rather than leading a prosperous congregation that included police commanders, celebrities, wealthy business people, and the Chicago school superintendent. So, I mean, what's he saying here? Like, Reverend Wright saying things that are correct factually, but are wrong in the context of saying them to people who are well off and like somewhat celebrated?
I mean, my thought about Reverend Wright for a while now has been that Obama's relationship with him actually mattered people sort of tried to dismiss it in 2008 as like, oh, this is like a smear and it's trying to do racial demographic. And it was that, but like it did substantively matter. It mattered substantively in the opposite way that the conservatives intended. It was not a signal that Obama was like a secret radical or whatever. It was a signal that Obama was somebody who was definitely exposed to radical thought and consciously rejected it. And that matters a lot. And this is like the thing that's important about, people have laughed about the long-legged socialist passage and like trying to get people to date him in college with Foucault or whatever. And it's funny, but like it also like, again, should concretize our sense of Obama as somebody who is not unaware that you can make more radical critiques of the way things are. He's somebody who has been exposed to all of that, and for whatever reason has consciously decided that he wanted to go a different way in his politics. And that's what Reverend Wright means to me. I mean, he's somebody who I think Obama sort of glommed onto because it was important to connect with the black church to make it in politics in Chicago, right? And after he performed that function, he was no longer useful. So as long as he was performing that function, he was willing to sit there and listen to talk about the drug war and American foreign policy and all these kinds of things, while not really taking in any of it and really taking any of it seriously, even though I think there are a lot of people or most people in that congregation probably did take it very seriously and were willing to harbor more radical critiques of the way things were. So I don't know. I think that Wright is, again, I think another window into who Obama actually is and the way he thinks about things. And I don't think you can I don't think you can blame Obama's politics or his presidency on a sort of naivete about capitalism or whatever else. Like he understands the critiques and is decided to reject them.
Yeah, Obama is, I mean, he's been an operator his entire professional life. He always has been. I mean, Reverend Wright was not an unknown quantity in Chicago.
Yeah.
And especially not in Chicago political circles. People knew what he was about. He was, I mean, Reverend Wright is a very interesting and kind of benevolent figure because another guy from Chicago who people try to tar the left and Democrats with, Farrakhan. Farrakhan exists because there aren't enough Reverend Wrights. That is to say, he's this specter of like non-liberal or non-democratic or non-Christian black politics that only exists because everything else in that space has been, literally assassinated by the government or marginalized or just like put out of existence. And Reverend Wright is like one of the only options that people had, one of the only good options that people had. Obama knew what he was getting into, but when he needed to be seen going to that church, he was seen doing it. And I actually think the Wright controversy when he became a national figure, I think that actually helped him with what he sought to accomplish, which was getting the cosign from the Democratic establishment and like David Geffen.
It was his own
right,
sister soldier.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
He wanted to show those people that he would shiv this fucking guy. This guy who kind of did a lot for him. He wanted to show them, you think the Clintons are ruthless? Look at what I'll do. You haven't even given me anything up front yet, really. Look what I'll do for you.
Yeah, I'm not going to flinch when you hand me the adrenochrome at the ceremony. I'm fine. I know I know what's going to happen.
Obama is, I mean, I think he may be a more cynical person than Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton, I think she kind of believes in this bullshit. Like whatever, like weird meritocratic liberalism and like, the best test scores rise up and help cement the power, institute democracy all over the world. I think she legitimately believes that. I think she legitimately believes in the people around her and the importance of Clinton world. And I think the fact that so many people went down with her ship and she down with theirs shows that. Obama sort of only believes in his historical projection. He's someone who's been living almost his entire life at this point in the third person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. Is that he is detached completely from politics because I think that the difference between him and Hillary Clinton is I think Hillary is, at the end of the day, she's a Whig. She believes in human progress and that she is helping it occur. Whereas Obama, I think, he's too conceited about himself to allow himself to believe something so naive. So he accepts he probably accepts like the basic truth of like a lot of radical critiques of capitalism, but he says, but the crooked timber of humanity cannot be made straight. The Niebuhrian like tragic notion that we are doomed by our own human deficiencies to this vale of tears, and in this world we can only do so much. And then therefore everything he does, his entire career of just taking all popular discontent with this buckling and wheezing monstrous exploitation system and smoothing it over and doing whatever it took behind the scenes to recapitalize the economy on the backs of regular people, and then getting a gloss on it and making it look progressive and making it look like to millions of Americans, making it look like progress and making it look like oppression to millions others. And never feel like you had anything to do with it because it was going to happen anyway. And wouldn't it be better for someone like him to be in that room than someone else who didn't have his exquisite soul and ability to grow and be enriched by these experiences?
Yeah, I always think back to the early Obama days when people would imagine, if they were conservatives, imagine Obama as Big Brother or Hitler in some cases. The most horrifying character from our cultural imagination that Obama most reminds me of is Patrick Bateman. Just a fucking empty vessel who knows exactly what buttons of affect to push for whatever group of people he's around, who is aware at his own emptiness.
You know what he is? He's a fucking prestige TV anti-hero.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, it's sort of a Don Draper.
Donald Trump is a literal reality TV cretin. And Obama is a figurative, and it has to be figurative because these are the smart people. This is the smart party. This is like the smart political tendency. He is an allegory for a prestige TV anti-hero.
And Hillary is like Sons of Anarchy. She's like,
yes.
No, fuck you. I'm loyal to the Anthony Weiner. I don't care what you did, Anthony.
Because they're from the 90s. The Clintons are from the 90s.
Yeah.
They weren't there to like get in hip with because with the new shit after the Sopranos model, they're just like blundering around Kurt Sutter style.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you're talking about the Sopranos, Osita, you do make reference to Obama's recent comments about historical conceptions of American masculinity as personified by Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, and Gary Cooper, which does, I think we've clocked this before on the show, does mirror precisely Tony's comments to Dr. Melfi about, what happened to Gary Cooper, the strong silent type. Now everyone's bitching to Sally Jesse Raphael. And I also like that you point out that all four of those men that are held up as like the kind of template for traditional American masculinity and like these values that Trump supposedly espouses were all dyed-in-the-wool reactionaries for their entire careers.
Oh, yeah.
Eastwood included. Eastwood's the only one that's still around, but he's probably the most. But like the idea that Clint Eastwood was like more right wing than Jimmy Stewart or fucking Gary Cooper is bullshit. Like if anything, he's probably like less reactionary than those guys. Certainly John Wayne.
Same with Trump, probably. Honestly speaking. When I read that quote, the first thing that came to mind was that the pilot episode of The Sopranos, where Tony was talking about what were fictional representations. This is the crazy thing. Like these are people who've played fake people and presented an image that was directly at odds with the society that they were actually entertaining, right? There was a much more cruel and violent society than our society today in a lot of ways. But because the images that we have carried over from that era, and the people like Obama and people like Tony Soprano fictionally inherited, those people who are too young, I guess, to have lived in the 30s and the 40s, like, I guess accept as real those images on some level and believe that people actually lived up to them. And Trump, you then come to understand, is an aberration because he's deviated from this model of masculinity. But, I think part of what The Sopranos is doing is telling you that, look, like, you can sort of harken back to and idealize this model of masculinity, of reserve and quiet and whatever, and also be like an emotional wreck and extremely vulnerable and extremely like violent yourself and kill people, and it doesn't really
And wind
matter.
up in therapy, you know?
And wind up in therapy,
Yeah.
exactly. So whatever story you tell yourself, and however much you think you're measuring up to a Gary Cooper, like those images were not real, and they were, you know, they were, if they were idealized because they were at a remove and at a place of real distance from what people were actually doing, and probably what human beings are actually capable of. So I don't know. I thought it was very odd that he invoked those people, not just because of the their own politics, but the mood in the Democratic Party and on the progressive identity politics left is always, or has recently been, we should abandon that way of thinking about the world and these kinds of heroes and understand them as fake. James Baldwin, when he debated William F. Buckley in 1965, had this great line where he said, I spent my youth rooting for Gary Cooper against the Indians, only to realize at a certain point that the Indians were me, right?
Yeah.
And Obama apparently doesn't have like that kind of an understanding of what these figures were and what they meant to people.
And then Buckley said, "If you call me Chief Sitting Bull again, I'll knock you in the jaw, queer."
I always loved the Gary Cooper line in The Sopranos, and because it's a multi-layered joke. It's like on its face, it's ridiculous because it's like, why isn't anyone like an actor from like 60 years ago? What are you talking about? But the joke of that, it goes deeper. It's that Tony is actually like the most self-pitying crybaby. Like everything is done for Tony's personal validation. There's no difference between Tony at his core and like someone who writes mediums, first-person essay mediums about how hard it is to have like a fucking philosophy PhD or whatever. What's interesting, Obama reflecting that line, is that is actually something I don't think about Obama at all, that he feels sorry for himself. I think Obama is in awe of himself, but I think Trump is most similar to the guy saying the Gary Cooper line. Trump's entire thing is that sort of Tony Soprano model of projecting this type of masculinity, kind of, but really just feeling bad about yourself and wanting your own personal validation. But Obama is an interesting figure to me in that way, in that I think someone posted Nixon's concession speech from 1960 today, and they noted that for its time, it was considered an incredibly fucking just embarrassingly emotional display, that no politician should behave that way. And now that's really, if he did that today, he would be praised for being emotionally subdued compared to everyone. Everyone just goes about in public feeling bad for themselves, whether they command armies or they're the head of the treasury or whatever. Everything is about how bad can you get people to feel for you.
And Felix, and all the time, a great wind is carrying them.
All the time, yeah. We go about self-pity, but yeah. Obama, if I could pick one thing besides his obvious charisma and like his sort of ease at which he speaks, at which he's around people, I think it's why people are still so into him. I think it's the fact that he doesn't appear sorry for himself in the way that literally everyone else
He's
does.
a winner.
Yeah.
Obama is a winner. It's the thing about Obama, like the difference between Obama and any other like off-brand version of him is that he did it, and he's able to just coast on that.
That's what I want to
for a long ass time.
Yeah,
I guess just
Beto tried the Obama thing, but Beto's a fucking
No.
He's a loser.
He's a fucking loser. That's who he is. He's being a loser to him is his genetically part of his identity as like being Irish.
Yep. And those two, you find a lot of them, a lot of things. Never mind.
Okay.
I shouldn't have said that.
Well, I mean, I guess that's
sorry,
the like the last question I want to go with Osita here, because I mean, at the end of the day, Obama, unlike many of his clones or like many other figures in the Democratic Party, is a winner, and it's like it's not the Clintons' party anymore because like Hillary fucking lost, and Obama is like the closest thing the Democrats have like as a figure at that level, as a guy who won, and he won easy, like pretty handily both times. So like it's his template for how to run an election, how to run a campaign, how to manage the sort of Democratic Party and its various constituencies and how to tamp down their expectations and sort of coast by on personality, but also as a template for how to I guess I would say negotiate in scare quotes here with the Republican Party. And I guess what I'm asking Osita is, if we're looking at the Biden administration as just like a speed run of Obama part 2, I mean, do you see this going forward? How do you see Biden sort of borrowing from the Obama model of how to be president?
Well, I think that all of the sort of, we're going to try to work with Republicans and who to the center and not seem so crazy. All of that is going to stay in place. I will say though that Joe Biden is not a winner, and we know that in part because Obama himself seems to lack faith in Joe Biden. I mean, there's this stuff when he was thinking about coming in where people were saying, well, Obama has said he doesn't really want Biden to come in and embarrass himself and so on. Like there's not a lot of faith, I think, within the Democratic Party.
Anyone can fuck it up. It's Joe Biden.
So, he's not a winner. I don't think that Biden is somebody whose politics you can even kind of superficially like he's of a generation that is going away. Maybe we see in 2022 a bunch of like random 70-somethings running in primaries on the Biden avuncular sort of model. I don't really think it can be done. So it's this weird stopping point, I think, for the Democratic Party's trajectory. I think the people that the party really wanted to carry things forward were people like Kamala Harris, people like Pete Buttigieg, etc.
But then dog won't hunt.
Yeah. So, I think it's a weird time to be an aspiring Democratic Politico, because you've had this interloper come in and seize this thing. But, I think you're right that the Democratic Party does, every generation, try to find the figure that they're going to sort of put in front of themselves as the model they should be trying to emulate. That's what happened with Clinton. It's what happened with Obama. And the ground is kind of open now because there's been this interruption of the process. When somebody of the previous generation coming in and interrupting and sort of blocking people off. And this is what you're seeing in the House, by the way, people are complaining about. The fact that people like Pelosi and Clyburn and Hoyer are sticking in there and they're not letting the younger moderates come in and present themselves as the new leaders of the party. There's this across-the-board kind of gerontocracy that is, I think, toppling or stopping careers and from the moderates' perspective, cramping their style. And, I think the story of the next 4 to 8 years is going to be the story of how the moderates come in and try to disrupt that and put new people forward. If you're on the left, I don't think any of it's really of much interest to you.
Oh, yeah. It's all internal house bullshit.
Yeah, so...
castle intrigues.
Unless you have a fantasy teams for this shit, which I really sincerely hope you do not.
Excuse me, my thehill.com fantasy league is doing quite well.
Very grim.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there with you, Osita. I want to thank you for hanging out with us for a bit. If people would like to find more of your writing or takes, where should they go?
You should go to the New Republic, just newrepublic.com, or my Twitter account, Osita Nwanevu, no spaces. I imagine if you're listening to this show, you probably have already seen one of those two things at least already.
All right, well, we'll go check it out. We're going to take a quick break, and then Matt Felix and I will be back to vibe with you further. Osita, thanks a lot.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you, Osita.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks.
Whatever happened to Gary Cooper, the strong, silent type? That was an American. He wasn't in touch with his feelings. He just did what he had to do. See, what they didn't know was once they got Gary Cooper in touch with his feelings, that they wouldn't be able to shut him up. And then it's dysfunction this, and dysfunction that, and dysfunction mafungo.
You have strong feelings about this.
Let me tell you something. I had a semester and a half of college, so I understand Freud. I understand therapy as a concept. But in my world, it does not go down. Could I be happier? Yeah. Who couldn't?
Do you feel depressed? Do you feel depressed?
Since the ducks left.
All right, part 2 of the show. Let's just vibe. You want to just like kick it off with that Tony Blinken?
Yes, let's rock it to the free world. Yeah, Tony Blinken.
Listen, Tony Blinken Park, Tony Blinken 182.
Nice.
There we go. Let's keep it going. All right. So this is.
It used to be fun in the mid 2000s to like read Stormfront because they were They were like 60-year-old foul Nazis as opposed to like 19-year-old Nazis who have like a lifetime of that ahead of them.
Yeah.
And they were just mostly just like pathetic fucking losers, like guys who were like just claim adjusters for 40 years and were like, I'm gonna repopulate the white race any day now. And they're like 50. It was just like losers, like people who try to get their kids into Nazism and fail, and like their family wouldn't talk to them. But the funniest threads to read on Stormfront were the ones that are like, I have a question. Can you be into white pride and still enjoy Moana? Like people are afraid of enjoying like non-white entertainment. And this is like if someone on Stormfront was like, I enjoy Chris Isaac, but he sounds a little bit too black for me. So I made my own Chris Isaac with a more white sound. That's exactly what this is like.
Apparently, Tony Blinken is like he's a Steely Dan guy. You know, he's into
Yep.
Steely Dan, which is like that's a very specific type.
That is a white flag.
That is
That's
a very
red flag,
specific
my
type of dude.
Anybody who likes Steely Dan has to at least get one jot into the old warning list. You got to watch out.
And Matt, what was it you're saying? Like he's in another band with a guy who used to be like in the Doobie Brothers, who then became an arms control expert.
This guy's name, the guy's Skunk Brewster, I think his name is. And he was in the Doobie Brothers, I think, and he after that became an expert on missile defense and ended up becoming a consultant for the Defense Department on Star Wars and shit. And he rocks out with Abe Lincoln here in the group that they jokingly refer to as Coalition of the Willing.
Wow.
Everyone's having fun. Everyone in Washington, D.C. always having fun.
And just to think
we love to see them have fun, don't we, folks?
And just to think that band Viet Cong had to change their fucking name because people complained about it. And these assholes, Coalition of the Willing. Hey, check out their latest EP. You forgot Poland. We forgot Poland. The new EP from Coalition of the Willing. Yeah.
Poland.
I guess it would be cuter if Joe Biden didn't whip up support for the Iraq War amongst Democrats.
Yeah.
But hey, who am I to say? What do these people always say about Trump? The cruelty is the point.
Yeah. No, in this time, no. See, that's the thing, is that when Republicans do it, the cruelty is the point. When Democrats do it, the cruelty is an unfortunate side effect.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate
That's the only
side
difference.
effect.
It's just two sides of the same coin, and it's how you feel about it. It's who you blame for it. It's who you're rooting for in the little Punch Judy show. But at the end of the day, the cruelty is there.
Just like how there's no real difference in Tony Blinken having a consulting firm that helps companies navigate Pentagon consulting contracts. Which, I mean, doesn't that sound like self-dealing a little bit?
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound like the exact same thing we got mad at Betsy DeVos and Mike Pompeo for?
Yeah.
But no, it's just he didn't know he was doing anything wrong.
I know you guys saw that fucking twerp from Vox be like, Tony. It appears that Tony Blinken has participated in society. Like he's like just like doing like the worst fucking internet meme ever about you live in a society, but on behalf of a guy who fucking left public service to just cake up on the defense industry's fucking dime and fucking
Mike, this is a guy who bitched about Michael Flynn going to an RT dinner. Isn't that just living in society?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
He's got to feed his big idiot son. I mean, my God. You know how many times he's been fired for Bed Bath & Beyond? They cannot keep... He's got credit card debt. He buys commemorative chess sets. He's just sitting around gaming and, like, buying pay-per-view. We have broadband, and he still buys fucking pay-per-view. I have to feed my idiot child. I can't go to a fucking banquet sit next to Jill Stein and collect some rubles.
And that's the thing.
You try raising my son.
That's the thing. Tony Blinken and his problems, they're not individually important. And the most useless question that people have asked is, who would you guys be okay with? What Bernie guy would you be okay with? No one. No one that Joe Biden would ever pick. That's why I didn't vote for him. That's why I didn't support him. That's why I didn't give a shit about this entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no one that Joe Biden would ever pick. And now that would ever get confirmed by the Senate that he's likely getting due to his own failures. And
even if this was somebody you maybe like in abstract, if he picked them, it would be because they would be frozen out of any actual influence.
Right, exactly. He would have final say. So that's it's not a useful question. Joe Biden's never going to pick a guy who's like, all right, day one, we're getting rid of NATO. That's never going to happen. You might as well say, what are you going to do when Joe Biden gives you the ability to fly? Because it's just as useless as a fucking question. But my point is the same point that we've had since Trump. It's that all these assholes do the same fucking thing and that they are equally delusional. This delusion that Tony Blinken has and that Joe Biden has that we can rebuild the prestige of the American empire that we had in the 90s or even the 60s by, having lunch with Netanyahu in the right way, it's equally diluted as anything else. This isn't coming back. The most realistic idea was to have someone that would negotiate our exit.
Yeah.
Now that's not happening.
Well,
now that's never fucking happening.
I would say like the actual difference between Tony Blinken and Mike Pompeo is that Tony Blinken is in favor of the Iran deal and was a big proponent of it and says that he may try the Biden administration may try to re-enter the Iran deal. And by the way, if you're Iran, what the fuck reason would you have to fucking trust America at all on any diplomatic level? Yeah, I would tell them to eat shit. And number two is that unlike Mike Pompeo, Tony Blinken doesn't wholeheartedly believe that the rapture will happen in his lifetime. But aside from that, from what I've read about Tony Blinken's career as a sort of Democratic Party apparatchik and foreign policy guy, is that he was in favor of the Libya intervention. He was critical of the Obama administration for not using enough force in Syria, and still defends Joe Biden's vote for the Iraq war as, quote, a vote for tough diplomacy, not war.
That wasn't just him defending it. He was Biden's top foreign policy advisor when he voted to go to war. So he wasn't just saying he did the right thing by voting to invade Iraq. He was telling Joe Biden, vote to invade Iraq.
Yeah. In the same token, we have Avril Haines coming up as DNI. Haines testified in favor of Gina Haspel, defending her role in CIA torturing. She had a role in redacting parts of the CIA torture report. Her official job, one of her official jobs with the CIA, was investigating the CIA to see if they had hacked into the computers of legislators who had questioned Michael Hayden. Who knows what she found? But if the CIA picked her to do it, what does that say about her?
Yeah.
You are getting the worst aspects of Obama term one foreign policy.
But the thing is because we're gonna be feeling, they're gonna be like, we have to reassert America now because they all feel like Trump weakened our strategic position in all these spots. So they're going to have to, in their own minds, be aggressive on all areas because they have to shore back up our standing instead of allow, because we have actually, NATO has been undermined by Trump. That's one actual long-term effect of his presidency. Accidental, oafish, idiotic, bull in a child shop idiocy, but a real effect. They want to reverse that. They want to reverse all the undermining that Trump did all over the world of American credibility, and that's going to mean carrots and sticks flailing around.
The other thing that I think you should look out for during this first Biden term, knowing what we know about his foreign policy team, it is going to be very late Roman Empire, and that is to say that Avril Haines is going to be running her own fiefdom.
A horse will be running their own fiefdom.
Yeah, well, that might be better than Avril Haines, but Blinken will be running his own fiefdom. John Kerry will be running his own thing, and they'll all be running their own thing because there's no one they can really report back to. You need a final say on a matter. You call the White House at 9 p.m. Oh, Joe's taking his nighttime milkshake. He's gonna be asleep. He's gonna be asleep for 17 hours. Okay. So Haines, So Haines wants to give a bunch of guns to these Azerbaijanis. Okay, Blinken has let's say, make it interesting. Let's say Blinken has Qatari clients with his consulting firm. They come to a head here. Who wins? Is it like when the Pentagon and the CIA's rebels would fight each other in Syria? Maybe a lot more of that. Get used to seeing that. Get used to seeing a lot of shakeups in the world.
Well, I mean, this is coming after, of course, based Trump's foreign policy of. I mean, he successfully, I think, neutralized people like Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and Elliot Abrams after putting them in charge of his foreign policy. So, kudos to the boy.
By the way, I meant to say Saudi Arabian clients, not Qatari.
Okay. I guess like the other cabinet pick that's worthy to talk about is fucking, of course, Rahm Emanuel, who I'm hearing today as a sop to angry progressive activists won't get Secretary of Transportation, but will just be put in charge of like negotiating trade deals with foreign countries. So something much less important than Transportation Secretary. But I mean, come on, though. I mean, like the Democratic partisans out there who have been squawking for like, I don't know, 6 to 9 months now that it's everyone's moral duty to vote for the Democratic Party because that's what black women do, are going to shut the fuck up real quickly. That Rahm Emanuel, like one of the worst fucking people on the planet, the guy who literally covered up a murder of a black teenager for the Chicago Police Department, come right back inside, sir, right this way. And I guess just like, because black people still voted for Democrats overwhelmingly, like they co-signed that. So that's good. And if you complain about that now or bring up the staggering hypocrisy of putting a guy like Rahm Emanuel back in charge, it's somehow on you, or it's like you're the one being racist or I don't know, just colicky or something. It's just like, get with the program. Kids in cages, we're off that. Black
Cruelty
Lives
is the
Matter.
point.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, cruelty is the point. The point of Rahm Emanuel is like, this is looking down all the, the more officially co-signed Black Lives Matter groups, the ones that were branded to be co-opted by the DNC, not the larger movement at hand. The ones who asked for even just something from Joe Biden, like that pathetic open letter that one branch wrote after endorsing Biden, and to go, you're going to tell us what to do? Fuck you. Here's Rahm Emanuel. Fuck you.
You know what? It feels like
you know what the thing is? You can't do anything about it.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Like fucking post more about it, complain about it, lobby them, or just like, or just get angry at other people who point it out.
Yes.
Or who just say, this is, or just say, you're complaining about this now. You fucking bought this. This is what you promoted. Like you did nothing but attack like anyone who fucking spoke out against this as being like, if not actively helping Trump or on the other side, then just sort of foolishly undermining, I don't know, like some sort of, I don't know, hopeful progressive vision of the future with your, these asks that you keep making of the Democratic Party. And it's just like, it reminds me when you say the cruelty is the point. It reminds me of the Kavanaugh confirmation hearing when I was like, they're obviously going to pull this guy. I mean, this is just insane, right? And it's like, no, they wanted to get him on the Supreme Court, even with that cloud of suspicion over him, because they wanted to prove to everyone that this shit doesn't matter. And they're like, exactly. If we want to get a guy credibly accused of rape on the Supreme Court in full view of everyone, we're going to do it because we can, and you can't stop us. What are you going to do? Vote for the other guy? Vote more, complain more, write a letter to your editor. We don't give a shit. This is all sewn up. And like putting Rahm Emanuel right back in fucking the Democratic administration is the Democrats' version of that. Then they're saying to everyone like, complain more about it. What are you going to do? Vote Republican? Fuck you. You get nothing.
Exactly. It's to further beat people down. It's the same reason why they killed Jeffrey Epstein in front of us. What are you going to do about it, podcast?
Yes. The answer is yes.
Yes.
We will
yes, we will. Yes, we will. We're going to keep doing that.
What else are we going to fucking do? We are going to podcast, and it's going to be dank, and it's going to be trill. There's going to be good japes and jokes. We're all going to have a good time.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up for today. I'd just like to wish everyone a preemptive happy Thanksgiving, no matter how you're spending it this year, whether you are all alone or you are going to create a super spreader event that will lead to an American Holocaust because, you just have to have those candied yams. Gotta eat those green beans. No, I'm just kidding. I really don't give a fuck what anyone does for Thanksgiving this year. Yeah, I really don't.
There's nothing stopping anything. Come on, man.
We're defeated as a nation. Like, really.
Yes, the white flag has been waved.
Yeah.
We've all surrendered at this point. Like, stop trying to negotiate for better terms. We've surrendered.
It's denial. People are working through their Kubler-Ross. It's like all the people who are, really, they're really hoping that like personal behavior is going to right this ship. They think that the mask tantrums are emotional and they are very childish, but at a certain level, you're failing to face reality in a similar way. I mean, that doesn't mean you just do whatever you want, but it means this thing of like making a part of your personality, yelling at everybody else, like making that your contribution to the common good. That's not doing anything. That's not doing anything except making you feel like you're a better person.
Well, I would
do
like
what you think is right, but do it.
Yeah,
and that's
no.
not part of it.
I mean, no. I just sincerely though, spending this holiday weekend, whether you're spending it by yourself, whether you're spending it in sheltering in place, or whether you're spending it with family. No matter what you're doing for this Thanksgiving, I just want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving and a happy holidays, and I hope you spend it with us, listening to your favorite podcast.
Here's a philosophical question for you that I'm going to leave you with. This will be taught in any 400 level philosophy class. If you are going to Thanksgiving solely to hold your uncle accountable for voting for Trump, does that invalidate that you're super spreading by traveling across the country?
I think it cancels it out. Yeah, it leaves you back to zero.
Yeah. Well, sound off in the comments.
Well, like I said, have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and keep holding people accountable. Hold yourself accountable, hold others accountable. It's our new watchword for the end of this year and for 2021. We're going to be holding them.
2021 will.
Chapo Trap House.
Year of accountability.
Chapo Trap House. Hold them accountable.
Year of accountability, baby. Everyone's going to be so fucking accountable they won't be able to handle it.